Every year as I go through the process, we know there are certain guys that I really don't like, and then there are certain guys that become like daddy guys, if you will. Those guys that I just gravitate to, that I latch onto. Haason Reddick for Temple is one of them dudes. He's one of those guys that I've been very big on throughout the draft process, and once I was able to fully grade him, fully evaluate him, I really bought into the versatility of the prospect and the upside of this prospect heading into the NFL. Now, the trick about Haason Reddick is, based off of the role he had at Temple, which was primarily as a defensive end at all of 6'1", 237 pounds, the trick is, he's not going to play there at the NFL level. So it is all about projection and looking ahead and thinking what he might be able to do. And that can be tricky sometimes. And Haason Reddick can potentially be a tricky evaluation, just like on the offensive side of the ball, quarterbacks can be incredibly difficult to grade. I think sometimes offensive linemen can be incredibly difficult to grade, in large part because the college reality of the talent and the schemes and the systems doesn't match in any way what the NFL does. The NFL hasn't caught up, or the college went off on its own divergent path. Depends on your perspective. But it can make certain positions really challenging to evaluate. It makes certain players really challenging to evaluate. That's why if you watch somebody that plays, let's say, in Alabama, and you're an NFL team that runs a 3-4, you like being able to watch a team like an Alabama, just as an example, because not only are the players talented, but they also are running an NFL type of system. You're not projecting if they can play in a 3-4 because you can actually judge them on film based off of what they did in a 3-4 at Alabama. And you don't always get that, especially on the offensive side of the ball, but sometimes on the defensive side of the ball. What do I really like about Haason Reddick? Explosive athlete, very explosive, very sudden, uh, great movement skills all over the field, forwards, backwards, laterally. And when projecting him to the linebacker position, some people might look at him and just automatically assume at 6'1", 237 pounds, he's got to bulk up some, and he's got to be an edge rusher in a 3-4, or maybe a Sam backer in a 4-3. I might go gravitate a little bit more towards a Sam backer in a 4-3, but I really think this guy can play at an inside linebacker in the 3-4 because he's got incredible range. He's got the athleticism and the football instincts to go sideline to sideline. He's got a good feel for anticipating plays and getting there. The only concern I have in terms of his range, and it could be even better, is that sometimes his angles, like one thing about Haason Reddick, is he really, really aggressive. He's not like from last year's draft, Carl Joseph type of aggressive. Because not that many players are that bowling ball of fucking butcher knives like Carl Joseph was. But Haason Reddick can play a little on the edge, and sometimes he could get so aggressive to the point where he could be borderline OC, out of control. And sometimes that could lead to him taking some angles that are too sharp, or sometimes they're too flat. He's in too much of a hurry to try to get there that he takes the first angle, the first path, which is not always the best path for him to take. I think he's solid as a run defender. He was able to hold up pretty well at the college level against the run at under 240 pounds playing on the defensive line. I don't have any major concerns about him being able to do so at the NFL level, at the linebacker position. He wasn't asked, obviously, to cover a ton. I thought at times he showed decent hip flexibility and the ability to turn and run. I think you really saw that in the drills at the combine. I think he's more than athletic enough to be able to man up against tight ends and running backs. Wide receivers might be a bit of a stretch. So it shows some feel for being able to stay in his assignment, stay in his lane, if you will, in zone, but he's going to need some work there. I think he's a great pass rusher. He's got an awesome ability to get low and bend the edge. Like I said, that explosive burst, that explosive quickness off of the ball, very good hand usage. The one thing that really helps us at Haason Reddick playing defensive line at Temple is that at the NFL level, he is much more advanced than a lot of linebacking prospects, and in particular edge rushing prospects, in terms of their hand usage. Because playing at 6'1", 235, 240 pounds at defensive end in college, even in the type of style of game the college is today, he had to learn how to use his hands. He didn't have a choice, because if he didn't, he was going to get dominated and he was going to get eaten alive. And he showed a really good ability to use his hands. And the other thing that's surprising about him for a guy that's not all that big, he's got a surprising ability to bull rush. And part of that could be based off of the ferocity with which he plays with, taking that explosiveness, that quickness, and converting it into speed, and then speed power, or just power in general, is the fact that he could use that lack of height, frankly, as an advantage in some cases, and he can get low and he could get leverage and he can keep his pad level. And I really, really like that about his game. Sometimes, as a tackler, like I said, he can play so aggressive that he can get out of position. He misses some tackles. He makes some big plays and makes some spectacular plays, but sometimes he misses an occasional basic arm tackle because he's just over pursued. He's overrun the play. He'll need to get a little stronger as well. But again, when I watch this kid, he plays much bigger than he actually is. He plays hard consistently from snap to whistle. The only other major concern that I have is the felony arrest he had. I think it was with teammate Deion Dawkins back in 2015. I think ultimately that went away. But, when you talk about off the field character concerns, that is one that will need to be investigated a little bit. But ultimately, this kid has conducted himself, I feel like, so well throughout the whole draft process. He embraced his role at Temple. He went from a walk-on defensive back to a high-caliber starting defensive end. That's crazy. Furthermore, he embraced what he was asked to do, where for his NFL future, it was probably going to be better for him to play somewhere as a linebacker. He played on the defensive line. And he's also embracing everything about the position change at the NFL. Sure, that comes out of necessity, but again, when I watch this kid, I just absolutely love what I see. And I see a guy, when you talk about projection, that I think projects to being a really, really good player at the NFL level. Is it as a 4-3 sandbacker? Is it as a 3-4 inside linebacker? Is it as a 4-3 weak side linebacker with blitzing ability, like an Anthony Barr type? Is it a 4-3 middle linebacker? You know what? I don't know, honestly. He could play probably all of those positions. I just don't think it matters. I think the dude is a stud. I've got a first round grade on him. Final grade on him is a 91.0. To me, he's as highly coveted in my eyes as any linebacker in this draft class, and I mean that.